Good evening. Danielle and Daryl here. Happy Valentine's Day. We are here to talk to you about food and wine pairing as far as picking a wine and dinner option. Two of the most common wines that most people would choose to pick around Valentine's Day would probably be a cab and something bubbly. So we decided that we would come on and help give you some suggestions on how to take either the cab or bubbly, or maybe one of each. Maybe you have a cab drinker and one that wants to drink bubbly, and how we can go ahead and pair those for Valentine's Day.
Hey, okay. Let's talk a little bit about Cabernet Sauvignon. So Cabernet Sauvignon is probably the grape that we're going to think of when we think of pairings. That is the best wine pair, I think, out there. Just a little bit about Cabernet Sauvignon. I know it's a lot of people's favorite wine. It's
mine.
If I had to
If I was going to
pick
drink a
one,
red, it's mine.
if I had to pick one, I would probably say mine. But so they did a lot of DNA on it, and it turns out it's kind of a hybrid between the Sauvignon Blanc grape and the Cabernet Franc grape. So Cabernet Sauvignon, there you got your name. Which ironically is two of my favorite wines. So two of my favorite wines go into making one of my favorite wines. It's the most widely planted grape in the world because it's the most popular wine. And it's been through all the 1900s. It's been the most popular wine until about 1990. Merlot took over for a little while. We had this little Merlot and Chardonnay. Everybody's drinking more Merlots and Chardonnays. And now it's back since 2015. Cab's the big one. The things about Cab, it gives you all those words. When people start getting wordy about wine and saying all those things, it's structured, it's complex, it's majestic. It ages wonderfully. It's smooth, and it's my two favorite words for it is power and elegance. It is powerful. It's the most powerful wine taste across standard varietal, but it's elegant. It's got kind of that refined, it's got such a complexity to it. So it lends itself to being paired with red meats. The aromas and part of it, if you understand the aromas and the flavors of wine, you'll understand, hey, that kind of goes with that. It's got the blackberry, black currant, the cedar, the graphite, the licorice, all those funky words, the cigar box, but it really pairs well with steak. In fact, the best wine pairing in all wine pairings, even more than Sauvignon Blanc and fish, is a cab and a steak. That is the number one pairing. But there's other red meats. Think of heavy, red, beautiful wines going with a heavy, dark lamb. So, like it or hate it, lamb goes great with a cab. And then cheeses too. A lot of people think that you would put a harsh cheese with a very strong wine. You don't. So the cheese that goes with Cab the best is an aged Gouda, and that's probably one of your favorites. One of my favorites. But a good lamb, good red meat, a good hearty burger, anything red meat, I think is going to pair with a cab real well. And you get those a nice cab and a steak dinner at Ruth's Chris is like phenomenal. Which brings us to, go ahead, say it.
But what I was going to say is, so when we went and celebrated your birthday and our anniversary,
that's what I was just going to get to. You nailed it. And that's something that actually you taught me. I didn't, when we went for my birthday and we got a bottle of J champagne with a steak, and I had, like everybody, light wines with it. So come to find out, it went wonderful. J champagne is an extremely dry champagne, And so a sparkling wine, and this is where I'm going to go from cab to sparkling wine, which is kind of opposites on the polar shelf, but sparkling wine is just CO2. It's bubbles. It's bubbles inside the wine. And you can get it from dry to sweet, from brut to doux, which means just raw or sweet or whatever. And there's three standard methods of getting bubbles in a bottle of wine. There's injected with CO2. So if you buy a bottle of $8 sparkling wine, it's going to be just injected with bubbles the way Coca-Cola is. It's just CO2 added to it, which is not wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you're looking for. I think the other ones are, now you can have the other opposite end is the champagne, the classic method, which is tipping the bottle and and this whole big process, which is why champagne's big bucks. Well, then you have the other one is the probably the more standardized of good wines that are bubbled is the Charmat method, which is just another process of adding the bubbles to the wine and fermenting the sugar to have the sugar and the yeast burn and make CO2, and kind of like the way it makes bubbles in beer, same thing. Thing about sparkling wine comes in, you get white, rosé, and red, so it's similar to wine. There is a handful of red sparkling wines, yep. Lambrusco, a lot of Italian ones. The white and then and rosé. I probably prefer white because it kind of goes hand in hand with it being dry.
But there are some good drier rosés, or
yes, absolutely.
I guess not super sweet rosé. I mean, I'm
semi-sweet, semi-dry.
I'm starting to realize. I mean, I like the real bubbles, but if I'm not drinking that, rosé actually does have some good sparkling rosés.
Yeah, I like those too. You're right. And here's the truth. If you're ever stuck in a pinch, a good dry sparkling wine will pair with every single food you can throw at it. That's the truth about a dry sparkling wine or champagne. It will go with everything you throw at it. Fish, steak, everything in the middle. But what's the perfect thing, I think, is seafood. There's a certain seafood dishes, shellfish, that you're really going to get. You're going to bring out that dry to semi-dry champagne or sparkling wine taste. The other one is the Proseccos, the semi-sweet ones. They actually go good with fried foods and Parmesan cheese. I mean, that's a phenomenal.
Why I like Prosecco.
And you're gonna find this as you go through your wine and food journey that, wow, this goes with this, and I like both of those. That's the palate. Your standard palate is gonna. And I think the sparklings also go with salty food too. So if you're going to watch TV and you have a little popcorn, there you go.
Can I go back and ask you a question?
Sure, absolutely.
So, why are some wines called sparkling or bubbly and others champagne?
That's the only one.
I know, but people, when they think of champagne, they think of like bubbles.
An onion seller can only sell onions that say the word Vidalia on it if they're from these 4 counties or whatever it is in Georgia. So for a wine to be called champagne, technically, and there is some bending of this, but it has to be from the Champagne region of France. Okay. So champagne is not a kind of a wine; it's a region of France that has been making. And if you go back to it, so one of the nicest, most expensive bottles you can get on the mainstream is a Dom Perignon. Mm-hmm. Dom Perignon was a friar tuck, kind of like Robin Hood. Here's the preacher of the town. He's also the guy that makes all the hooch. And he was like charged with, hey, that wine that we're making, can you get rid of the bubbles? Because they were blowing up in their cellar. So that was where he was kind of put in charge of that, and then it became kind of nouveau to have bubbly. So then he mastered the bubbly, and to this day makes one of the better more high dollar wines. But Champagne has to be called. It can only be called Champagne from the Champagne region. Any other region, if it's got bubbles in it, it's called sparkling wine.
And there you have it. So we want to wish you a happy Valentine's Day, and hopefully some of these suggestions and ideas for either a cab or a sparkling wine helps you out.
Yeah, and on the next one we'll
Cheers.
Cheers. We'll do a little cooking. Maybe we'll do a little actual live pairing, where I'm gonna kind of maybe go into the kitchen and say, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna be just like what we do every day. What are we gonna have for today? So we're gonna do that one
Look
next.
for a cooking show next week.
Okay.
Until then, have a blessed week, and again,
Cheers.
happy Valentine's Day, and cheers to you.
Love you all.